But Somaliland, it's a region that's not actually breaking away from Somalia, but like going back to a statehood it already had before, even.
Exactly.
Fascinating. So,
Well, and what's really interesting is that they were independent before Somalia was.
okay, wait, hold on. So you're saying there's a place that declared independence before the country it's supposedly part of?
Yeah, we're talking June 26, 1960. We even have a New York Times image, capturing the celebration from that day.
That's why. Okay, so just to kind of set the scene for everyone listening, Somaliland, it's on the coast of East Africa. Right. It borders Somalia to the east, Ethiopia to the west, and Djibouti to the north. And then you've got Somalia just south of it under Italian administration.
Correct.
So very different histories there before things got, all jumbled up in 1960.
Yeah.
But Somaliland's independence. So what went wrong? Like, what happened there?
Well, let's look at some of the evidence.
All right.
We have these excerpts from a document called SL4
Okay.
that sheds some light on this whole period.
Mm-hmm.
And it suggests that Britain, they insisted on a negotiated agreement for any union,
Okay.
but things didn't really go according to plan.
Oh, no.
So for one Somaliland's active union,
yeah.
it was rejected by Somalia's legislature.
So it's like one side saying, yeah, let's merge, and the other one's like, wait, we didn't agree to this.
Exactly. And it actually gets worse.
Oh, boy.
The 1961 Constitution and the referendum that was supposed to solidify this union,
Right.
they were filled with coercion and force.
Mm-hmm.
There were even reports of Somaliland territories boycotting the whole referendum altogether. And then to top it all off, the African Union, they sent a fact-finding mission in 2005
Right.
and concluded that the active union was never legally ratified.
Wow. So it's a mess.
It's pretty messy.
Okay, so we've got this disputed union coercion. This is where Somaliland's argument of state continuity versus secession comes in.
Right.
Right. They're not saying that they're breaking away. They're
Yeah.
saying, we never legally stopped being a state. We were unlawfully annexed by Somalia, and we reclaimed our sovereignty in 1991
Yeah.
after years of struggle. And we actually have this infographic for our listeners who like to learn visually
Yeah.
to illustrate the difference.
Right.
So with state continuity, it's like a state being put on pause, maybe hidden away, but it always existed and then it reappears.
Yeah.
Secession is like a brand new thing breaking away from
There they are.
something bigger.
Yeah.
And what's really important here is that there's no record
Right.
of any international agreement transferring jurisdiction over Somaliland's territory to Somalia.
That's right.
So there's no document out there that says, Somalia, you now own Somaliland, which strengthens Somaliland's claim, especially when we talk about treaties and international law.
Yeah, treaties, they're kind of like contracts between countries. They carry a lot of weight.
Right, so Somaliland isn't just saying, hey, we should be a state.
Right.
They're saying, we already are one. And they're using the Montevideo Convention to back that up.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It outlines the criteria for statehood.
Yeah.
A permanent population, defined territory, a government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. And Somaliland checks all those boxes.
They do.
They have their own government, their own institutions.
You're doing the state thing.
They're doing it.
Right.
And they even engage in international agreements.
Right. They're like, look, we've got a functioning government. We hold elections. We even have a prisoner exchange treaty with the Seychelles.
Yeah.
And an agreement with the UK for citizen repatriation.
Exactly. We're
Wait.
doing it. That's where the comparison with the Baltic states comes in.
Okay, so how does that work?
They offer a really compelling historical parallel.
Okay, so
So both the Baltic states and Somaliland,
okay.
they experienced an illegal annexation
Okay.
by neighbors. The Soviet Union, in the case of the Baltics,
Right.
Somalia in the case of Somaliland, they were absorbed and they emerged decades later,
Right.
reclaiming their former statehood based on this argument of state continuity.
So you're saying that just like the Baltic states were under Soviet rule for 50 years
Right.
and they were able to prove their continuous statehood,
Right.
Somaliland's saying that those 31 years under Somalia
Exactly.
doesn't negate the fact that they existed before.
Precisely.
Now,
Both emphasize that despite the forced union, despite the changes in government, their core identity as independent states
right.
remained.
And to make that point even clearer, both Somaliland and the Baltic states,
Yeah.
when they reclaimed their independence, immediately reinstated their pre-annexation legal framework.
It's like saying, see, we're picking up right where we left off.
Exactly. And that brings us to this whole world of international law and treaties,
Yeah.
which I'll admit kind of makes my head spin.
It can be a bit much.
But so the UN, right? It's like the global referee.
Right.
They require all agreements
Right.
between countries to be registered,
Like filing that paperwork.
like filing your paperwork. Exactly. And guess what? There's no record of Somalia having any legal claim
Nope.
over Somaliland.
In the UN's filing cabinet.
Right.
Not there.
So even though Somalia might say Somaliland is part of us,
Right.
there's nothing internationally
There's no treaty.
that backs that up.
That's right. And this is significant.
Yeah.
Remember that case where Somalia sued Kenya over a maritime border dispute?
Right.
That legal action could only happen because there was a pre-existing treaty between them. If Somalia wanted to take any sort of similar legal action against Somaliland,
Yeah.
they would need a valid treaty,
Which they don't have.
which doesn't seem to exist.
Okay. So Somaliland checks all the boxes for statehood, permanent population, defined territory,
Yep.
functioning government, historical precedent on their side.
That we have never been part of Somalia. We were two separate countries. And now also for a very long time, after a very long struggle, we have been living independently and existing independently for a very long time. Somaliland will continue to send appeal to the rest of the international community and to continue and relate and work with the rest of the international community until we reach the position where we are recognized.
No legal document tying them to Somalia. They've been operating as state for over 3 decades. Successfully.
Yeah.
They've got a democratically elected government, a stable society, a growing economy. They even hold regular presidential elections.
You do.
It's amazing what they've been able to accomplish without this international recognition. It's like they're proving a point.
Yeah.
Like they're a state whether anyone acknowledges them or not.
Yeah.
But if some countries are willing to engage with them, like we saw with those agreements,
Yeah.
they're not seceding.
Right.
They're returning to their original
Right.
pre-union statehood.
Exactly.
So how does that argument?
It's a valid point.
Yeah.
And Somaliland insists that their case is unique, that this isn't about redrawing borders.
Right.
It's about restoring a pre-existing state. So they have all this potential,
They do.
you know, livestock, agriculture, marine resources, you name it. But they're struggling to really get their products out there.
Exactly. Because they don't have that official recognition.
Right. It's like they're being held back
Yeah.
economically despite having all these resources.
Yeah, think about it. Imagine trying to run a business
Yeah.
when you can't easily open a bank account in another country,
Right.
or get a loan, or secure international investment.
Yeah, you're really limited in what you can do.
It's a huge hurdle for them.
Yeah, and the consequences go beyond economics too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Think about things like healthcare
Yeah.
and education.
Right. Without that formal recognition.
They're excluded from a lot of international aid.
Yeah, all those financial institutions and development programs.
So building hospitals, training doctors, providing medicine.
It all becomes more difficult.
Yeah. And I'm sure those two territories had their own distinct cultures and histories and legal systems.
Exactly. And that's what Somaliland emphasizes.
Okay.
They argue that their legal and historical framework is distinct from Somalia's, further reinforcing their claim of state continuity.
So let's dive a little deeper into Somalia's formation.
Okay.
What does the sources tell us about that process?
All right, well, we have a UN trusteeship agreement,
Okay.
Treaty No. 381, and it governed Somalia from 1950 to 1960.
Okay.
It was administered by Italy,
Right.
and it explicitly states that Somalia's boundaries were to be determined by international agreements.
There's that word again, treaties.
Right.
And as we've discussed, there's no such agreement
Right.
that includes Somaliland.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
And this UN agreement,
Yeah.
it refers specifically to the territory formerly known as Italian Somaliland,
Okay.
not to Somaliland,
Mm-hmm.
which was a separate entity under British rule.
So basically, there's a whole set of treaties and documents
Yeah.
relating to the formation of what we now know as Somalia,
Exactly.
and none of them include Somaliland,
No way.
which again strengthens their argument
Absolutely.
that their legal status is separate.
It further supports their case.
So we've got these two entities with different colonial histories,
Mhm.
different legal frameworks, a disputed union.
What makes a state? What role does the international community play in recognizing or denying that status.